Welcome back to my channel. Here I discuss life as a survivor of chronic, complex childhood trauma, because the way that we engage with the world and people around us has been altered, and this complicates things. As we, if a person is fortunate enough to choose to be away from their abusers once they become an adult. So one of the things I want to talk about is the mind games that my relatives used to play with me when I was a child. Yes, I struggled with people pleasing. Yes, I struggled with speaking up for myself and finding the words to say. But I was never one to just sit there and tolerate people's stuff. I would become visibly upset, become dysregulated, and either after a certain amount of time I would just become confrontational, or just start acting aggressive. So with my relatives, I did, let them know that, their behavior was not okay. And that led to more emotional or mental, psychological tactics that they will play. One of the things that my relatives used to do to me to dehumanize and erase my identity, my own identity, they used to always compare me to my mother. They used to always say things like, oh, you're just gonna end up just like her, you're gonna end up just like her. Or when they would do stuff to me and I would get very upset and say something, or behave negatively or whatever, they would throw that in my face. So you're acting just like your mother, you're acting just like your mother. They would sit up and clown me for not sitting there and taking their shit. They would make it seem as if I was wrong for being upset or calling them out for their abusive behavior. When I was younger, my aunt, when we first got with her, got to her home to live with her, she started out right as soon as it wasn't regular visits from CPS or whatever. She just was abusive, right out the gate. There was no, a short time period. It was immediate. Once it was all said and done, my brother and I were out of foster care and she became our legal guardian, she started right up with the insults, the just being mean, rubbing our trauma in our face, rubbing the fact that I was neglected very heavily, to the point to where my hair was matted and tangled or whatever, just not a very nice person. And so when I was 9, I think we went to live with them when I was 8 or 9. And I had this book and I wrote in it and I said that, that I couldn't wait to get away from my aunt and that I hated her. And up until my mid-20s, my aunt would bring that up to me. And periodically, when I would go spend the night with my sister or with another relative, it was just so relieving being out of her house. And she knew that. And she intentionally made things very miserable. I'm not saying that my brother and I were like the best kids or whatever, but I know for myself, I wasn't trying to get into trouble. Like, it was appeasing to me to get good grades. It was appeasing to me to, work and to be a productive teenager. Like, I knew that even as a teen, I had to set myself up for adulthood. I needed to make sure, I knew how to read, I knew how to understand. Like, I knew that I wanted to be something. I knew that I wanted to be successful. I was never trying to be a teen parent. I wasn't trying to date, all these hood dudes. I wasn't out in the streets fighting or whatever. And I tried very, very hard to not get into trouble. And all of that was missed on my aunt. She would never recognize any of those things, but the moment there was a boy calling or me talking to a boy, like, it was just, that was the thing. And it was like she always had so much negativity to say, but it's like she was literally overlooking all the good that I did. And so it made me less motivated to, like, I was still gonna stay on my goals, but it pissed me off. And so I, had an attitude. But anyway, she, when I would like come back from like certain relatives' house or whatever, she would be like, oh, you got what you wanted, yada, yada, yada. So right before like I had moved out of her house, this was when, I was trying to figure out whether or not I was actually going to go away to college or just stay in Flint and go to college. So my aunt took me to Western Michigan or whatever. We met with like the financial aid people. And I just pretty much decided after that I just was going to stay in Flint. And I was like, you know what? At least, I'm just still going to college. Like, I don't really care. I just don't want to not go. And so we went back to my aunt's house and then we took a nap. Then my aunt woke me up because the college was like 3 hours away. So it was like 3 hours there and like 3 hours back. So we had been out all day. We ate and I was just sleepy. So by the time she took me back home, I don't know, I was just kind of like dragging ass. Like, I was just like, whatever. So I got out the car, and so, my aunt left and whatever. Then the one that I was with, so the aunt that I lived with, my legal guardian, as soon as I got in the house, you getting out the car like you hate being here. You act like it's miserable here. And it's like, bitch, it is. It really is. And like when I finally like moved out, like I said, she kept bringing up what I wrote about her, and it really bothered her. But it's like, they change your behavior. You know what I'm saying? Like, and the thing is, like, with my relatives, I've noticed that in the family, nobody holds each other accountable. It's like certain people get to be abusive, certain people get to be rude, and then certain people just sit there and keep everybody else in line. Like, oh, you know how they are. Oh, they've been through a lot and all this other stuff. And I wasn't with that shit. That shit never soothed me. Like, it never was an excuse, because I had been through a lot, and I know for myself, I had no ill intention for people. And when I was in a relationship with people, if it wasn't benefiting either of us, then we were done. But like, I didn't have hidden motives for people. I wasn't being abusive towards individuals, even though people had been abusive to me. So I always knew, like, when you become abusive, just because a person who is an abuser has, a trauma history themselves, That's not a fucking excuse to be abusive. Like, and I don't care that they didn't go to therapy. I don't care that they didn't get properly educated or medicated or whatever the fuck, you know, I don't care. Like, you make that choice. And that's just where I've always been with it. And so those excuses that like my cousins and stuff would say to excuse the abuse that happened to them and to try to excuse whatever bullshit, you know, the abuse that I was receiving, it just never satisfied me. And I am the first person in that family system to fucking leave and to hold them accountable, to take away access to myself and my children. And they don't like it. They feel like telling me that it wasn't that bad, that I was blowing things out of proportion or smearing the family's reputation. But it's like, you all did those things to me. It was okay for you to go and tell all my business to people. My relatives would literally, I've watched them treat non-relatives way better than they ever treated me. Extend grace, be curious, be protective, all these things, and withhold that from me. Because at the end of the day, like, even though most of my family has been abused, I got it worse because I was a female and because I had no protective factors and because of who my mother is. You know, I took my mother's place, you know, because she went out and was on drugs. And it was like, there were so many times where like my relatives could have stepped in, you know, but instead they decided to always humiliate me. One of the topics that they loved to talk about was, oh, your hair, it's always uncombed, it's this and it's that. But it's like, as a minor, the upkeep of my hair is my guardian's responsibility, not mine. Like, obviously kids can do their own hair, but it's like, you're not teaching me how to do my hair. You're not buying me the products that I need to do my own hair. You're very rarely taking me to go get it done. And then now you all want to talk about me. My clothing, like, my father was paying child support. So there was no reason why I didn't get my hair done regularly. There was no reason why I didn't get clothes regularly or shoes on a regular basis. But all of these things, this neglect that I was experiencing, my family would taunt me about it. But it's like, I've watched them do for others. Like, they see that someone has a need and they would just hurry up and take in and just take over and do it. Like, nobody had to ask. They just knew, they saw it, and they went in to rescue whoever. But when it came to me, it was just like, oh, we're just gonna make fun of you. And then that's that. And then they thought like they could just continue to play games. And then they thought my very valid anger and indignation against them, they thought that they were gonna make me feel bad for being angry with them. Like, no, I'm keeping this anger, okay, because that's all I got. Like, you're not gonna sit up and take away my damn feelings, take away my reaction. You're not gonna do that. I'm not gonna sit here and smile through this. I'm not gonna sit here and not have a fucking attitude. Because, you know, like, we'll have family gatherings, and my aunt, who was my legal guardian, she had 2 adult children that would be like my cousins or whatever. So she had a son and a daughter. So the son, he was the one that was physically and all of that abusive to my brother and I. And he had children of his own. And so I remember one time we were having like a family gathering. Now everybody's there. And so I'm in line about to make my food. And so he decides, now there's nothing wrong with him. He's not disabled at all. So he's like, you need to make my little cousin's plate. And I got mad because there are a lot of adults here. I am a child. All the other children are making their own plates. Like, why do I have to make his plate? And I got pissed off. Like, I threw a fucking fit. And I just was protesting. I was like, no, I'm not doing it. Like, why are you bothering me? You know what I'm saying? And it had got to a point to where I would just become like very withdrawn at the gatherings. And I would just, if it was like at my house, you know, where we lived at, I would leave. Like, I would just go walking in the neighborhood or just not really be around. And depending on if it was at another relative's house, depending on whether or not I knew the neighborhood, I would leave because I got so tired of the bullshit. And like, that was one of the things that they would do. Like, I had a cousin, you know, we were the same age. She was just 2 months older. And, you know, she had a fully intact protective system. Mommy, daddy got a whole extended family. And my aunt, you know, she had her father's side of the family. So she had cushion. So my relatives knew not to bother her. So we would all be in the same setting, but because they can't harass her, because they can't boss her around, you know, now they're finna make me pay double time. And because my little brother, like, obviously I was very angry, but mine was like more passive, like a lot of eye rolling, you know, just showing an attitude and then withdrawing. But my brother, he would just flip the fuck out and start being violent. So my aunt, she didn't really push it with him. And it was like, because they couldn't do certain things to certain people, but they knew it was free reign. They knew nobody was coming for me. You know, they felt like they could take out all their shit. And so that was one of the things that they would do. They would always ask me and force me to like make plates. They would just be talking about me, chopping me up when I had gained weight. My weight was the topic of everything. And it's like, this is a family full of fat asses. So how in the fuck are you other fat motherfuckers talking about me? And then when I lost the weight, then it was, oh, you're too skinny. You're too skinny. And, you know, it's just never, you're never going to win with these people. And they always move the goalpost. Like, nothing that I accomplished was ever celebrated. And if it was something for me, my relatives made it to where something had to go wrong. Or if something did go wrong, they would not help. Like, they just would be like, oh well. Like, they did not want me to have any joy, any happiness, any freedom. They actively worked very, very hard to make my life miserable. Then turned around on social media to present themselves as, oh, we love you, this, and that. One of my cousins, who had been a bitch this whole motherfucking time, you know, to me, even as a kid, she was just a mean ass bitch. And she used to be on social media acting like we were so close. She would be writing all this bullshit about what she loved about me and what she missed and this, that, and the third. But it's like, when I see you in person and all these years that I've known you, these 20 plus years, you know, you have never acted like that. You told me that nobody cared about none of my accomplishments. That was out of her mouth, flat out. So why are you playing games fronting on this social media app? Like, it just, like, I just couldn't deal with it. But the constant, like, goalpost, moving. And I remember, like, the aunt, my mom's younger sister, the one that was talking about how she was disgusted at me being pregnant and came up to my birth and rolled her eyes at me. Then when I called her out about it and confronted her about her actions throughout my pregnancy and her coming up there disrespecting me while I'm giving birth and having complications during birth, she gonna say, I didn't come up there to start nothing. I was there being supportive. And her and my other cousin, they were like, she was so upset that you didn't invite her, so that's why I had to bring her up there. And it's like, if your purpose to come up there was to be supportive, then why weren't you being supportive? It was like they thought that they could play games with my processing. Like, do you, like, like, it's just funny now because people will sit up and engage in behaviors that are very toxic and abusive. And when you call them out about it, I didn't do that. I didn't do that. You perceived it wrong. You perceived it wrong. Like, bitch, fuck you. At my sister's funeral, my father's sister, he had twin sisters, and one of the twins had my son. She was holding him, whatever. So the other twin came up, and the twin, she was like really excited. She was like, oh my gosh, it's such and such, yada yada yada. And her twin sister looked me up and down. She's like, I know who that is, and like walked off. At my sister's funeral, they were taking pictures with both of my brothers. They did not invite me over there to take pictures. And these people know who I am. Like, I've been looking the same ever since I was a little girl. Like, nothing has really changed about my features. It's just that I'm an adult now. So obviously I don't look like a little girl. But features have been the same. Like, I'm not like a different skin color. My hair still looks pretty much the same. Like, there's no mistaking who I am. And so they can't say, oh, we didn't know who she was. Yes, you did. Yes, you did. So anyway, when I confronted this aunt a few years later, because it just kept sitting in my spirit, and the Lord was like, I just got a thought, a download, like, go ahead and confront Linda, my aunt. And so I sent her a message and I just laid it out for her because, my father went and like concocted this whole story to make himself seem like the victim, the mind games that these people play. And my aunt, she was so fucking coward that she had my cousin respond back. So my cousin texted me. I sent the email on the message on Facebook because that was the only avenue where I could write like a very long message, because texting, you can't really do that. And I had a lot to say. Because I had to let her know about her actions, about the actions of my grandmother, my father's mother, about my father's side of the family, and let her know, like, I haven't had any familial support, and then the support that I did get, it was used to try to trap me into an abusive relationship. My sister, my cousin threw me a baby shower only to throw it in my face to try to control me. My cousin did things for me allegedly to help, but whenever I wasn't acting the way that she wanted me to act, you know, when I was holding people accountable, she would always throw that in my face. And it's like, why are you throwing things in my face? Like, you are my family member, just like whatever. So you should not, like, if you do something for me, it should be off the love, off the strength, because we are family members. And if you see I am in need of something, or I need to know something, or I need help with something, you need to help me and not throw it in my face in an attempt to control me just because you don't like the fact that I've cut the fucking family off. So, I just, you know, the fucking mind games that the motherfuckers used to play on top of everything else. It was like nobody could take accountability for anything. And they were very pissed that I cut their asses off. And the first time, like, I said something about them on social media, it was a post, and it was a very general post, but obviously I felt it. You know, it was about your family not respecting you. And that was my experience. My family did not respect me at all. And so I had shared it. And so my male cousin, the one who was my aunt's son, who was abusive towards my brother and I, he deleted me off his social media with a fucking quickness, because he can't stand to see me talking about his actions. And it's like, if you can't stand to see how I truly felt about you now that I'm free, you know, now that I have adult privilege and I don't have to tolerate it, you know what I'm saying? You can't hit me because now I have the legal right to defend myself, and now I could hurt you back. You know what I'm saying? Now I am able to freely speak because y'all didn't want me to talk for so many years. Now I'm able to freely talk about my experiences with you all. And now it's, wow, because that's what he commented. Then after that, he deleted me, and then his oldest son had deleted me as well. But it's like now with like my younger brother, he's like all close to them and stuff like that. And I just feel like that's some weak ass shit. You know, and I know people have choices to make in their lives, but people who stay with their abusive family, like, I know it's a trauma response and all this other stuff, but that shit weak. You know, like, that's weak. And to me, spiritually, it looks like you sold yourself out. You've sold yourself out to people who don't give a fuck about you, who's gonna always show that they don't give a fuck about you. And you sold yourself out, what, for money? Just to say, oh, I'm in proximity with my relatives, or I'm with this man, or whatever the case may be. I just think that's some weak ass shit. And, you know, I would never encourage anybody to become estranged, because this path, you know, it got very hard at certain points, and, you know, you just never know where people be at when shit get hard for them. And I don't want to encourage someone to get rid of their support system, even though they're not a support system. But in their mind, they feel like these people are supportive, then that's on them. But it's like, I just don't want anybody to do something that they can't really do, but it do make them a weak person, like a weak-minded individual. And, you know, that's why I can't really get into like a lot of these trauma specific ideologies that promote you need to be in community for healing, because there's no community for us childhood trauma survivors. People don't want to be around us. They don't want us talking about our childhood. They don't want us talking about our fucked up families. They don't want us talking about how we didn't have no fucking happy memories. We have to mask, because people will start changing the subject and become very visibly uncomfortable and upset. And waiting on community, seeking community, keeps people low. The best thing for people to do is to pull themselves up by the fucking bootstraps and heal and start putting themselves first. But, who am I? Who am I to say that? I'm just me. But as a childhood trauma survivor, my whole life was centered around people making them feel comfortable, masking, holding stuff in, and I'm not doing that shit no more. And if a person can't go to the depths with me, if a person can't allow me to be vulnerable, if I can't be goofy or have my interests or whatever, if I can't get support, if I'm being mischaracterized and people have this ill perception of me, then I don't want them to fuck around. I don't need no fucking community. And if, I know money is a big thing for people. If it's not meant for me to have something, then I won't fucking have it. As long as I have myself and my fucking peace, that is worth more than being around people who have ill will, ill intention, and do not think highly of me. Like, I'm straight on that shit. But apparently that's a very toxic, individualistic thinking. But for me to heal, I had to become individualistic, because if I didn't, I would be a shit mother. If I didn't, I would be like my mother. So, yeah.